The Cuban government has continually been able to guarantee a right to housing for every single Cuban. Almost 2/3 of Americans say they can't afford a home. Who is it that's buying up all these rental properties? Well, the number one rental property owner. Let's get to how Cuba ended homelessness. How did Cuba end homelessness, I wonder? Because it's funny, because Cuba is not a very wealthy country, and the U.S. is immensely wealthy, right? Loads of money. We can print all the money we want. And yet the U.S. has tons of homelessness. Why is it you can have such a rich country with tons of homelessness and a poorer country with zero homelessness? This is an article about the alternative to homeless that was seen by this author in Cuba. So they start off by giving you some of the numbers of the United States. Within the United States, homelessness has become a permanent feature of the capitalist system, with around 650,000 U.S. residents sleeping on the streets on any given night. In the last 30 years, the average age of homeless individuals in the United States has risen from 30 to 50. Politicians in Washington, meanwhile, dream up new ways to slash Social Security and Medicare, leaving future generations anticipating poverty in lieu of a secure retirement after decades of work. That 650,000 number, which is repeated a lot, and if you look up homelessness in America, you'll find 650,000 as probably listed as the number. But I think that's very low for a variety of reasons. One of them being that it is hard to poll homeless people, so these numbers are not always very accurate. On top of that, you have all the people who are in living arrangements that they don't want to be in, that are not good. You know, maybe living with parents who hate them, maybe living on their parents' couch, maybe living with an abusive spouse, an abusive girlfriend, boyfriend, etc. They don't count as homeless because technically they have a roof over their head. They are not in a good situation and technically are kind of homeless because they are not living where they want to be living. Anyway, you have all these tent cities that have popped up around the United States. Cities crack down on homeless encampments. This article says advocates say that's not the answer. Yeah, it's utterly insane and sociopathic to crack down on homeless encampments. It's basically saying, hey, those of us who are lucky enough to have enough money to not be homeless don't like having to see homeless people. We don't like them around. We don't like the fact that they don't have a garbage can or a toilet easily accessible. So our answer is to make it illegal. Well, then what? What is that? Where do they go? What does that solve? It's like we did in the United States back in more racist times. We're certainly not free of racist times, but back in maybe more overtly racist times, the U.S. did kind of make being black illegal in many ways. Did that stop people from being black? No. Well, this is the same. Making homelessness illegal does not get rid of homelessness. What gets rid of homelessness is giving people homes. But instead, you have these tent cities popping up, and you have cities across America that are crushing them, destroying them, making it illegal, arresting people. 50%, I believe, of everyone, I remember reading this number a while back, of everyone who is chronically imprisoned in the city of New York is or was, in and out of homelessness. So 50% of those who keep getting put in jail are the homeless. I've also heard that roughly 50% of all homeless in the United States are mentally ill, which is that the solution to someone who's mentally ill? So anyway, the U.S. thinks the answer is to make it illegal. When I was in D.C., they bulldozed a well-known homeless or tent encampment. And even though they gave the people a bunch of warnings, we're going to bulldoze your tents, they still managed to partially bulldoze a man who was asleep in his tent. He survived with a lot of injuries, but that's what our police are doing, is bulldozing people trying to survive by living in tents. And let's just also remember that it certainly does not need to be this way in one of the richest countries in the world. The U.S. has 17 million empty homes, vacant homes, 17 fucking million, 17 million empty houses and homes across the country. That number's really probably gone up. That's from several years ago, but probably gone up. It's enough to give every homeless person 17. You can give every homeless person 17 houses and not run out of houses. Of course, that has to do with how capitalism works. The rich buy up several homes. They don't use them. They're waiting for an investment. They're waiting to sell them at a higher price. Or they just buy up several homes and sit on them and don't use them. Whatever the reasons, these homes sit empty while we have a million homeless people. It's absolutely disgusting. Here's the latest study, latest report. 61% of Americans say they can't afford a home. Say they can't afford a home. Sorry, 61%. Almost 2/3 of Americans say they can't afford a home, which makes a lot of sense in a country where we're supposedly one of the richest in the world and can't afford a home. In Cuba, landlordism is abolished, meaning you can't just own a property and make money just because someone lives there. Landlordism is abolished. And let's think about what a landlord does, right? They essentially do nothing and make money from you. Now, yes, you could say, well, they had more money, so they were able to buy the housing units, which is why they own them. Yes, they did have more money. But this is, again, how the system is weighted for the rich. But after they bought that housing unit, or sometimes they've taken a loan from the bank, which the bank, that's interesting. The bank facilitates the rich getting richer, but doesn't facilitate you able to pay your rent. After they have that housing unit, what do they keep doing for it? Essentially nothing. They just collect money from you like a parasite. Anyway, landlordism is abolished in Cuba. 80% of the population own their own home. 80% own their own home. This stands in stark contrast to the United States, where the majority of everyday people are slaves to rent payments, mortgages, and the banks that collect them with interest. Housing is a human right in Cuba, even as the country experiences a housing shortage, and the socialist system has virtually eliminated homelessness in Cuba. It will get into this more, but why do they face a housing shortage? Well, because the U.S. economic war against them has made it very difficult for them to build houses, and other aspects of a bubbling economy are very difficult when the U.S. is at economic war with you. In Cuba, sleeping in public places, digging through trash for food, and begging is referred to as ambulant behavior. Root word is not ambulance, as in the car, the truck to help you. It's ambulatory, as in walking around. Anyway, for those of you who thought I said ambulance behavior, ambulant behavior, rather than being called homelessness. The top cause for ambulant behavior can be attributed to, shocking, alcoholism, mental illness, and loss of family support. People having a very tough time. If they're mentally ill, if they're so addicted to alcohol that they really can't function, even when they are guaranteed a house, guaranteed a roof over their head, or loss of family support. And loss of family support tends to be most difficult on the very young and the very old. So I would imagine the loss of family support they're talking about is mostly, people 70, 80. Even amidst these measures, which have cost the Cuban people an estimated $1 trillion, they're talking about the U.S. economic war has cost Cuban people $1 trillion since the revolution's victory in 1959. The Cuban government has continually been able to guarantee a right to housing for every single Cuban. And then it goes on to detail a farming community where a lot of people live. One of the places where people who are having a tough time and can't have a roof over their head can go live and help out at this farming community, and types of things like that are the solution in many ways. Utah had mostly solved homelessness. There were some issues with it. Some people didn't like the situation they were offered, but Utah ended about 90% I think 93, 95% of all homelessness in Utah by, again, shocking idea, giving people a apartment. Just giving an apartment and a caseworker, because many homeless are mentally ill. So an apartment and a caseworker. Decreased homelessness by 95%. Basically ended homelessness. And then they got rid of that program. They stopped it because it worked too well, which is how our government functions. When you find something that works and find something that helps people, you immediately delete that program. Who is it that's buying up all these rental properties? Well, the number one rental property owner in the United States is Blackstone. This article says how America's largest landlord and Wall Street's highest paid CEO are jacking up rents and ramping up evictions. So their goal, they're the highest single owner of rental properties across the United States. They're worth trillions of dollars, and they basically run around buying things up, jacking up the rents, and making it incredibly difficult for people to live there. And then they try and find people that are able to pay that kind of, higher amount. And Blackstone, the highest paid CEO on all of Wall Street, is now one of the biggest donors to Donald Trump. So Blackstone funds Donald Trump, and one of the biggest donors or players with the Biden administration is BlackRock. And BlackRock is another venture equity firm, except it's so large with its $10 trillion that it's larger than every government on the face of the earth except the US and China. BlackRock is larger than the GDP of every country on the face of the earth except the US and China. And this article, the ties that bind BlackRock and Biden, lists all the BlackRock people in Biden's administration, which is many, and the power they have. Here is the power that these assholes have. This just a year ago. New Biden rule permits money managers, basically people who do nothing but are parasites on our system. They just make money by moving money around. Allows money managers to play politics with trillions in retirement savings. So they can take your retirement savings and fund candidates that you completely disagree with. And this rule was put forward again by Biden. And he has been linked completely to BlackRock. BlackRock heavily influential in his campaign. I mean, not his campaign, his government. BlackRock also overseeing the quote-unquote reconstruction of Ukraine, which means selling off of Ukraine. Through that selling off of Ukraine, the U.S. and Western corporate interests have actually bought more of Ukraine than Russia has taken in the proxy war in Ukraine. So right now, during this proxy war, the U.S. and Western interests actually have stolen more Ukraine than Russia. Don't hear that mentioned a lot. Then you also dig down a little deeper, and who's one of the top shareholders of Blackstone? The one that's funding Donald Trump? BlackRock. BlackRock essentially owns Blackstone. It's BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. And who are the top shareholders of BlackRock? Well, BlackRock itself actually owns a big piece of BlackRock, but then also Vanguard. Vanguard and BlackRock own our country, buying up all the houses, buying up all the land. They also own our government, and they're funding both sides. Did you catch all that? Hope you see the connections. Shitstorm we're in as these lunatics, these sociopaths buy up the entirety of this nation. 93% of stocks, meaning 93% of corporate America now owned by 1% of the people in this country.